Live, you'll see the clock. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network's Going Solo Veterans Corner. Once again, I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert from Northern Virginia. As you know, our show's goal is to connect veterans from across the United States and allow them to share their experiences, their careers, and how they made the adjustment back to the civilian life for those that have, and how they're making a difference within their communities. So before we get started tonight, I just want to say a big thank you to tonight's sponsor, Quest Jewelers from Merrifield, Virginia. QuestJewelers.com. Visit them for fine custom-made pieces and quality jewelry. So if you can imagine it, Quest Jewelers can make it. So a big thank you to Pete and Juan Tain, the owners of Quest Jewelers, for sponsoring our veterans program. All right, let's meet tonight's guest, Bill Scott. Bill is a retired Marine Master Sergeant who spanned a 24-year career and started as an aviation maintenance specialist and finally retired in 2010. Bill also spent multiple tours as a Marine Corps recruiter, guiding young people looking for direction into the military. He completed several tours out in the fleet, including an assignment as Mobilization Chief after 9/11, and completed his service as an administrative chief in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. He's now a successful business owner and president and CEO of Global Executive Staffing located here in the Washington, D.C. area. Bill holds a master's degree in administration from Central Michigan University and a bachelor's degree in business management from the University of Phoenix. So first of all, welcome to the program, Bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you, and we're starting to have a little bit of a run on Marine Master Sergeants here on the show. You're my second one in as many shows. In the last show, I had another retired Marine Master Sergeant, who oddly enough we'll talk about in a little bit. Not him, but your parallel with career, because he also spent some time as a Marine Corps recruiter in Manhattan during his career. So, I'm kind of interested in talking to you a little bit about that. But as we go through, I wanted to start out asking you, how you got into the Corps. What drove you into the Marine Corps?
So, interesting story. I actually was a student at Howard University down in Washington, D.C. And while attending Howard University, I had a roommate my sophomore year by the name of Andre Davis. And he had spent about 6 years, maybe 8 years in the Marine Corps. And he was a part of HMX-1, Presidential Helicopter Squadron.
Okay.
And he had the greatest pictures of all these different places, different countries, different things that he had done during his tour in the Marine Corps. Well, prior to that, prior to going to college, I spent my last 2 years of high school at Fort Union Military Academy. So I had a military background. My father was in the Army, an artillery officer in the Army during the Korean War.
Wow.
So the military mindset was already ingrained in me. Just never knew that I actually really wanted to do it. So once I went to college and I finished at Howard University, I realized that, you know what, I needed some structure in my life. I needed a little bit more discipline than what I had. And then I decided I really wanted to travel and see the world instead of really going to work. So,
Okay. So that's kind of what guided you in. It's kind of interesting when you mentioned your father spent time as a field artillery person in the war. Reason why I say that is because that's actually how I started my Army career. I started off when I first got in field artillery in a fire direction center, and got some pretty sage advice from an old first sergeant who happened to be my battery first sergeant. And I still remember him telling me, Holbert, if you're going to stay in, you better get out and find something else to do besides this, because this will kill you. So that was some pretty sage advice. So if you don't mind me asking, how long was your father in?
I think just during the Korean War.
Okay. All right. So just during, all right. So you come from a military family then.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Not too much, just me and him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your dad, then you. I mean, that's considered a military family
Yes.
as far as it goes. So
Yeah.
I understand that when you got into the Marines, and this seems to be a trend. I've had several Marines on the show, and it seems like a lot of them start their careers in marine aviation. And I'm not sure if there's a particular draw there somehow, because you started your career in marine aviation as well. So how did you get in that? Because I'm starting to see a recurring theme here from some of my Marines is where they spend some of the early part of their years in aviation.
So, unlike, this is one of those product knowledge type of situations that you learn when you go out on recruiting duty, when you got to learn about the other branches of the service and you got to learn about what they do. But then you also have to know what it is that the Marine Corps does as well.
Yeah.
The Marine Corps pretty much has the ground side and the aviation side. So you're either on the ground side or you're on the aviation side. Now there's an in between, which is transportation, administration, computers, all of those, finance. But ultimately, you're either going to be assigned to a ground base or you're going to be assigned to an aviation base. So
Okay.
there's really no in between. If you do more technical, if you go into more technical fields, you find yourself on the aviation side.
Hmm.
If you want to be into tanks, motor T, of course, artillery, infantry, then you'll be on the ground side. So, I
Okay.
mean, that's pretty much why you see that there's only one of the two. A lot of the more technical positions, they deal more with the aircraft, supporting the aircraft, and the aviation side of the Marine Corps.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it sounds very similar to one of the other guests I had who was talking about this a little bit, and I guess it's very similar to the point where you get to the point in your career where they make you a master sergeant, and it comes down to a choice there. I think of what going the path of a master sergeant or a first sergeant in the Marines, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So it's a similar career path. So
Yeah,
what? Yeah. Go ahead.
you either so it is a similar career path, but what you normally find, if you're on the aviation side, then you become a master sergeant.
Yeah.
And then you become, after master sergeant, if you make E9, then you become a master gunnery sergeant.
Okay.
Versus if you're on the ground side, most infantry and most ground side commands, they have a first sergeant and then they have a sergeant major.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
sergeant major is one of those ranks that you can do infantry or aviation. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I
But
mean, it's
if you're a
yeah. Go
master
ahead.
gunnery sergeant, you pretty much stay in your you stay in your technical field normally as a master gunnery sergeant.
Okay. So that kind of explains the career paths. I know for me, when I made master sergeant for the Army, first sergeant is a lateral appointment. So there I was, a master sergeant, and my specialty was nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare. But they made me a first sergeant, made me the first sergeant of a signal company. So you can imagine what a learning curve that was.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I mean, I can see it. It sounds like the Marine Corps one makes a little more logical career progressive sense, I think, than the way the Army was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it depends on your career field.
Yeah.
I know on the aviation side, I was a cryogenic equipment operator. So I dealt with liquid oxygen and liquid nitrogen and aviation breathing oxygen for the jets and helicopters. So the highest that we went was master sergeant.
Yeah.
And so there were only, when I was in, there was only 137 cryogenic equipment operators in the Marine Corps at any given time. So with only 136 Marine Corps wide, there's probably one master sergeant in the entire career field.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to progress past that, or you want to see master sergeant, you either have to go down a separate path, pick another career field, and then try to do something different, which is how I ended up on recruiting duties for so long.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question because, like I told you, um, I saw that you did the same thing, is went into recruiting duty, but I think you did something a little different. We'll talk about, you getting into it, but you did something a little different. You went into recruiting duty, spent some time in, went back out into the fleet, and then went back into recruiting duty, didn't you?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. How did that work for you?
So basically, in the Marine Corps, if you want to advance, you have to do what's called a B billet. And there's primarily 3 B billets throughout the Marine Corps. You're either going to go to the drill field and be a drill instructor, you're going to go on recruiting duty and be a recruiter, or you're going to go to Marine Security Guard duty.
Okay.
And then you'll go to MSG duty, and then you'll go to an embassy assigned somewhere around the world. And
Yeah.
all of those billets are 3 years. So it's really your decision as to what you want to do. You can decide whether or not you want to be a recruiter out on the street, or whether you want to, be somewhere in some remote, place like, who knows, Russia or Sri Lanka or somewhere crazy guarding the embassy, or you can go on the drill field and you make that choice. So for me, I was a young corporal. I had just came back from Japan, and then as soon as I got back from Japan, they said, "Hey, we're getting ready to go over to Saudi Arabia." So then we went to the first Gulf War, came back from the first Gulf War, and I said, "You know what? I need to do something different. This is getting a little old." So I knew one thing that I didn't want to do, which was get up every morning at 5 a.m. and take 50 Marines that were in recruiting duty, on recruit depot, and go run 3 miles every day.
No.
So I figured that there was 2 options. I could either go train the kids that were in recruit depot, or I can send them there. I figured I'd do a better job trying to send them there than I would being down there trying to train them in that heat.
So I take it you weren't too much into the daily PT, huh?
It wasn't my first choice.
Well, I still remember too. I was a young guy when I went in the Army, but I still remember too. We went through basic training and AIT and did all that PT and ran like dogs. And then when I got to my first duty station, they were talking about getting up and doing PT in the morning. I went, "What? Wait a minute, what? I got to continue to do this stuff?"
Exactly.
Oh, so I got to ask you, as a recruiter, I'm sure you had some of the oddest experiences.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you could pick out one that really stands out, why don't you share that with us?
Sure. I would say I remember being in Detroit, Michigan. I was working out of the Redford, Michigan office on a 6 Mile and Beach Daily, and I had this kid that he went to Redford. He went to Redford Union High School. I remember it. He went to Redford Union High School. On his 16th birthday, he was a sophomore in high school, and he says, "Are you the new recruiter for my high school?" I said, "I am." He said, "I want to be a Marine." I said, great. And I said, how old are you? He said, I'm 16. I said, can't do anything with you at least until you're 17, a senior, and I got to have your mom's permission.
Yeah.
And he said, no, matter of fact, he was 15. And I said, he said, well, I'll be 16 next month. I said, well, you still got to be 17 and I got to have your mom's permission. So he goes, well, don't worry. I'm not going anywhere and I'll come back and visit you. And you're going to put me in the Marine Corps and I'm going to be a Marine sniper. And I said, well, you know, we can't guarantee you to be a Marine sniper. We can put you in the infantry. And then once you become an infantry, then you can go through the steps to become a Marine sniper. So I said, so here's some pamphlets, here's some bumper stickers, you know, go on home. I'll see you in a year or two. He said, okay, great. He shows back up in 6 months and he says, hey, I just came by the recruiting office. I rode my bike over here. I just wanted you to know I'm still interested. I'm not going anywhere. I said, okay, well, I appreciate it. I'll see you when you get a little bit older. He said, okay, great. 6 months later, he comes back. He goes, I'm 17 today. I'm ready to join. I said, well, you haven't officially become a senior yet because you can't join until the graduating seniors and then the school year starts going into the next school year. So until you're classified as a up and coming senior, I still can't do anything with you. He said, well, what day does that happen? So he goes to the school, he finds out from the school what day he would be officially classified as a high school senior. And then he comes back and he says, hey, they told me that as soon as the seniors graduate and they walk across the stage, I'm officially classified as a senior a week later. That date is June the 9th. I said, okay, great, no problem. He goes, I need you to come to my house at 9 o'clock on June the 9th so that my mom can sign the paperwork for me to join the Marine. And I said, are you kidding me? And he said, no. So on June 8th, he comes to the office and he goes, my mom will be waiting on you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. so that she can sign the paperwork so I can join the Marine Corps. I said, all right, I'll be there tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Give me your address. He gives me his address. I get over to his house at 9 a.m. I walk in the kitchen. I said, hello, ma'am. How you doing? I'm Sergeant Scott. She goes, I don't have time to hear anything you got to say. I've heard it for him for the last 4 years. Where's the paper? Where do I sign? And when are you taking him to take the test so he can join? I said, it's right here. Sign right here. She signed the paper. I was there all of 2 minutes. I left. I said, you got an overnight bag? He said, yeah. I said, good. He goes, are we going to MEPS? I said, we are. He goes, am I going to take the ASVAB again? I said, you are. He goes, and so when do I get to go to boot camp? I said, as soon as you take the ASVAB, as soon as you pass the physical at MEPS, they'll give you a date to leave. He goes, I want to leave the day after graduation. That kid bugged me the entire year he was in school.
I'll bet.
And he left the day after graduation.
Wow. Boy, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, that's incredible. I got to tell you, I got to share one too, and this is from an old country humorist. And had an old boy living in the country, and he went to the military recruiting station in town, and he went in there and he walked up to that recruiting sergeant sitting behind the desk, and he says, "I'm ready to go. I want to go now." Sergeant says, "Well, fine, sit down. Let's talk to you." He said, "I ain't got time for no talking. I'm ready to go now." He said, well, young man, we got to sit and talk and find out what your story is and get information from you. He said, no, all you need to know is I want to go now. I want to jump out of trees and holler gung ho. He said, I want to learn hand-to-hand combat and throw them hand grenades. He said, I ain't got time. He said, well, we got to get you signed up so you can go to training. He said, I ain't got time for no training. I'm ready to go now. And then the sergeant jumped up, hit his fist on the fist and says, "Fella, you're crazy." And the boy looked at him and said, "Write that down." He didn't want to go. He wanted to be declared crazy. But it sounded like that young boy was just ready from the beginning, wasn't he?
From the beginning.
That was probably one of the easiest recruiting jobs you ever did, I would
That
imagine.
was.
Well, Bill, let's talk just a little bit um, when we come back from our break about you leaving the service, and I understood that you were able to finish your education. So we're going to take a short break here, and then when we come back, we'll pick up your story there. Okay.
Okay, great.
So for those of you, the audience out there, we'll be right back. All right. And we are back, and welcome again to the WGSN-DB Veterans Corner. Again, I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, and we are talking today to retired Marine Master Sergeant Bill Scott. Bill, I want to welcome you back, and let's kind of pick up the story here. You were leaving the Marine Corps um, after various tours of duty, and especially some interesting ones as a recruiter. And I understand. I think you took a similar path I did. You were actually given an opportunity to finish your education while you were in the Corps, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, that I know for a lot of NCOs, that's a thing that we all try to do. And I was fortunate enough as well to get into an assignment where I could go back to school and finish my education before I retired. So, what allowed you to do that?
So, actually, what I desired to do was actually um, achieve my master's, and that was my primary focus. So, in 1998, I started down a path to where when I was at Howard University, I was an engineering student. So I was in the School of Engineering. And then working in cryogenics in the Marine Corps, that was an engineering related field. But I didn't really think that that was what I really wanted to do, was the engineering field. I felt that I had more of a business mindset. So I ended up going back to school at the University of Phoenix, um, taking some classes there. They took a lot of my military experience. And that was one of the great things about the University of Phoenix was all of my NCO classes, a lot of the curriculum classes that I took. They used those as life history, as life learning classes. And I was able to pretty much have an associate's degree almost pretty much completed just off of my military training.
Yeah.
So I went through that. I got a lot of that taken care of. And then I think in about 18 months, University of Phoenix gave me a bachelor's degree in business management. So then from there, I decided that I wanted to take about 6 months off. And then since I was already in the mindset of working during the day, taking classes at night, I was still stationed in Detroit, so I started right back up at Central Michigan University.
You're
Um,
working on your master's degree.
and I started working on my master's degree. One of the good things about it was that, classes started at 6 o'clock. I was able to leave recruiting duty around 6 o'clock, go to class, stay in class till about 9, and then, go home, do some homework, and start all over again. I left there. I was able to go to my next duty station, which was out in Kansas City at the Marine Corps Mobilization Command. And I was able to take some more classes out there. Central Michigan had some more classes that I was able to take out there. I was able to take some online classes as well as in-person classes. And then I left there and ended up back in the DC area, stationed at Quantico. And the Pentagon actually had in-person classes inside the Pentagon.
Yeah.
In some of the rooms down there. So I ended up finishing up in the Pentagon with Central Michigan University while I was stationed at Quantico. Got my master's degree in international business, and that was one of the best things I could have ever done.
Yeah, you're a gentleman after my own heart, because I will tell you that sounds very much like my story in the Army. I remember spending those days working as an instructor, and then those nights in class and weekends in class and doing school assignments at night, and I had that same goal as you did. I wanted to at least have my master's before I retired. And that's why I was kind of curious how you did it. But you took basically the same path I did, using those nights and weekends and wee hours to do it. So yeah,
Yep,
that's great. And in fact, that kind of got you to where you're at today, because I know you made that transition from the military, and in fact, you are now the owner and CEO of your own business, correct?
that's correct.
Yeah, so why don't you share a little bit about your company with us and tell us what you do?
So I am the president and CEO of Global Executive Staffing. We are a staffing firm um, out of Washington D.C. and the National Harbor, Maryland. We pretty much provide professional services, administrative management. We go as far as to do healthcare management, and about 8 other NICS codes that we're really good at. We do some IT staffing. A lot of times, other companies reach out to us when they have those hard to find positions that they need people for,
Yeah,
and we try to find the necessary people. So I use a lot of my recruiting skills that I learned to actually find those individuals. A lot of what I do, being in the DC area, I try to reach back to the educational uh, departments on the different bases in the DC area, so that when they have those TAP classes, I try to see if I can get in front of some of those people to let them know that, hey, global executive staffing is out here. A
yeah,
lot of times, what we do is we go and we try to reach out to all the veterans that are retiring or that's getting out, and try to do some placement for them. So any veterans that's out there listening, we're always welcoming new resumes, and we always have opportunities throughout not just the DC area but all over the country.
yeah. So you were Bill. You were talking a little bit about some of the technical language of NICS codes, and which I understand are the National Industry Classification System codes
That's correct.
that you use for your business. Um, but it is admirable that you're in a business now to help retiring and transitioning veterans. Um, so tell us a little more of some of the things, some of the services you do for the folks in the transition assistance.
So a lot of times, being in the staffing industry, a lot of times, every veteran that gets ready to get out the military has to go through a transition assistance class. You got 4 or 5 days. They teach you how to slap a resume together right quick. They teach you how to halfway put a suit on, and they try to teach you some basic interviewing skills.
Mm-hmm.
But in today's industry, where it's very competitive, everybody's looking for a job, you got to do something to make yourself stand above that. So a lot of times when I get resumes, the first thing I do is I review the resume. I try to make changes. I try to tell the veterans or anyone, hey, this is what they're looking for today. You know, you have this in here, you have this in here. These are the things that are not going to benefit you. They don't want to know your whole military career. You really only need to go back 10 years. All right. Curtail your resume for the job that you're applying for. If you're applying for an IT position and you have no IT related skills on your resume, the chances that you get picked for an interview are going to be almost impossible.
Yeah.
So, you know, they tell you a lot of times you need to have 2 or 3 resumes. You actually need to have 5 or 6 resumes. Depending on what career field that you're trying to get into, you need to have a resume for each one of those career fields. And a lot of times you can pull information out. The military trains us to be very versatile. You know, nobody goes into artillery and all they do is pull the lanyard and fire the gun. There's more to it than just that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you got to order the supplies. You got to order the necessary materials. You know, you got to do paperwork. You got to account for all of the shells that were expended. You got to do a whole lot of administrative stuff. So don't look at it as you just being an artillery person. Look at some of the side things that you have to do. No position in any branch of the military do you only do your job. There's always a collateral duty that has to be done, and you have to document all of that. You have to put it all on your resume. You got to reword it so that it looks presentable and amenable to the person that's reviewing your resume. You know, don't have a 4-page resume.
Or a resume filled with military acronyms no one understands.
Right. Nobody's going to read a 4-page resume.
Yeah.
You know, and get to the meat of what it is that you're trying to say. I tell them all the time, a two-line introduction of that job description, and then 2 or 3 bullets, and then go on to the next job. That way you can get more on one page.
Well, you know, I think you kind of set a pretty good example for, you know, any of our veterans watching the show, because, you know, you had a successful career in the Marine Corps. You know, you got your education as an NCO. You know, the officers, they work a lot of long hours as well. But the advantage for them is a lot of them go in, they already have their education. You know, people like you and I who went in enlisted as younger folks, we didn't really have that full education, because when I went in, I had an associate degree, but it took me from 1981 to 1994 to finish my undergraduate degree before I could start grad school. So, I mean, I think you are an inspiration and are setting a good example for a lot of these veterans out there who see you and say, you know, this is kind of the way I'd like to go. But I also want you to share with us, Bill, because correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that your business is not only 8A, but it's our service disabled veteran owned small business as well. Is that correct?
So we're not 8A.
Okay. All right.
We are service disabled veteran owned small business.
Yeah. Can you explain to our folks? Explain to our folks a little bit about what that is, about the service disabled veteran owned small business and how you became that.
Right. So becoming the acronym, as we all know in the military, is SDVOSB, Service Disabled Veteran Owned Small Business. Once you leave or separate from the military, doesn't matter how many years that you do, as always, they always tell you to put in your VA paperwork with the VA, with the Veterans Administration.
Right.
Once you put in your separation package with the Veterans Administration, you'll get a service-connected disability rating. All right. If you are classified as 30% disabled or above, then you are classified as 30% service connected disability, which allows for you to apply with the Centers of Veterans Excellence with the VA for your service disabled veteran owned small business certification, which allows for you to go after certain set asides when you're applying for government contracts with the federal government.
Right.
If you're not 30% service connected disabled, then you are classified as a VOSB, which is a veteran owned small business.
Right.
And so you have that ability too. One of the things that benefit you from being a VOSB or a service disabled veteran owned small business is there are a lot of opportunities that across the country people are trying to reach out and help the veteran community. And so you always hear about the big companies, CACI, SAIC, Deloitte, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin. Well, every time a government contract is issued, I'd say over 50% of the time, there's a small business portion that has to be met by those big companies.
Right.
So you may have a minority portion that has to be met. There may be 5 to 10%. You may have a veteran service disabled veteran owned small business percentage that has to be met. There may be 5 to 10%. And a lot of times, as much as we all like to get the big home run all the time, sometimes, you gotta just get on first base.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like to tell all the new veteran owned businesses, 10% doesn't seem like a whole lot. But when you're talking about a $50 million contract, 10% is a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that, you worked hard to get your business in place and become a service disabled veteran owned small business. And I think that's something to be admired because, I mean, not only are you being a success after your military career, but you're also able to employ other people in your company and create jobs because we all know that small businesses hire more people in the United States than anybody else. The interesting thing that I like about the contracting world, which I've worked in the federal government for about the last 17 years, is that the government really does try to do those set asides and support veteran owned businesses. So you being able to build that business and do what you do is a credit to the hard work that you've put in to get to that point. So those of you watching the show, you can see Bill's company name on the bottom of the screen, Global Executive Staffing. There's his website and his phone number. So if you're interested in talking with Bill or one of his folks about the work they're doing, the transition work that they do, give him a call. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to talk with you, him or one of his folks there at the company. So Bill, before we kind of wrap things up, I always ask my guests, and I think you're a really good example for a lot of our young soldiers and NCOs having gone through the career path you did and now owning your own successful business. But if you could point out one important piece of advice that you would like to share with our other veterans, what would that advice be? What would you share with them?
I would have to say, I don't know too many military personnel that are shy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so they don't train us to be shy.
No.
So I would say, if anything else, I would say one of the things that I learned on recruiting duty: speak to any and everyone, and always be closing. And what I mean by that is, you're never going to get where you want to be and what you want if you don't ask anybody.
Yeah.
And if you ask everyone, someone's going to say yes. And they're going to give you that break that you're looking for. And, don't be afraid to talk to other service members. All of us wore a tree suit, regardless of what color it was and where we were stationed, but we're all brothers in arms and we're all here to support each other. And that's what we need to remember.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bill. And that's a really good, profound piece of advice. And I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight and sharing your experiences on our program. And as I said, Bill, I think you really have an admirable story coming through your career like you did, being able to get your education and now being a successful business owner. So again, I think it's a story to be emulated by our younger veterans. And I want to thank you for taking time to come on the show tonight.
It's been a pleasure, Paul. I appreciate you having me.
And for those of you veterans that are listening out there, I want to do something just a little different for a moment tonight and just kind of point out to you something. As Bill pointed out, the old expression, it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. As a veteran, like Bill said, they don't teach us to be shy. If you're a veteran out there and you need help or you want help looking for a job or you're not sure how to transition, Bill and companies like his are out there to assist you. Or if you just need help, I just want to remind you that the help is out there. The VA website, if you go to my website on the Going Solo Network, the VA crisis line number is there. The VA website number is there. So my parting thought for the veterans tonight is you're not alone. You're not by yourself. If you need help, it's out there. It's not a weakness to ask. So I encourage you. I implore you and I encourage you, if you need the help, go get it because it's there. And there are people like Bill and his company and people who serve veterans who are there to help you. So I want to thank you for listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. We try to keep veterans connected with their communities, bringing awesome guests with helpful info, which keeps you and your families better informed. And we hope you've enjoyed our show. Veterans, as always, we want to thank you for your service, and we hope that watching the show will inspire you to live your best life. I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, and I would like you to visit theliteraryvet.net, my author's website, and the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network and goingsolomedia.com for more information. Well, thank you all for listening. And Bill, again, thank you for coming on the show, and good night to everyone.
Thank you, Paul. Good night.